عولمة الحرب وعالمية السلام، المقتضيات والشراكة. في هذه الحصة نحن سنركز على الجانب الثاني من المؤتمر، المقتضيات وأهمية الشراكات، ضرورة الشراكات. ونبدأ بكينوت بمتحدث رئيسي. So it's just my utmost, pleasure to introduce my good friend, Dr. William Bentley. Dr. Bentley is the Vice President of Finzer Institute. Dr. Bentley is known to all of you and known to this particular forum. He served as the Secretary General of Religions for Peace for about 27 years before he made the transition. But his work is known around the world in terms of advancing peace and harmony. Dr. Bentley, please, the floor is yours for your keynote. Welcome.
My brother and our moderator, Dr. Mohammed Al-Sunusi, thank you for your too kind invitation. I'm so happy to be together here in this forum. And as we all in our hearts give thanks to this beautiful land, to these beautiful people here in Abu Dhabi, and to their far-sighted leaders, and to our beloved Sheikh, we are united in our feelings of gratitude. I want to recall with you one of the presentations that we received earlier on remarkable initiatives. You'll recall with me Sheikh Abadi from Morocco reporting on the Common Word Project. And the Common Word Project is the letter on the love of God and the love of neighbor. And I believe that is the description of our forum, all of us here, in the love of God, the love of Allah, and the love of neighbor. And my comments are greatly based on that. Mohammed Al-Sunusi, as you said, given the globalization of the threats to peace, we know that climate change, weapons of mass destruction, globally interlocking production and supply chains, pandemics, what we just heard of Taiwan and Ukraine, the forum naturally calls us to radicalize, go to the root of what partnership means, go to the root of partnership in our globalized world with globalized threats. I want to review that there are two reasons that I think the forum is placing this before us. The first is pragmatic. Very pragmatically, the forum argues that we need to face this. Recognizes that we are safe in the final analysis as the least vulnerable among us. There simply are no walls high enough to protect us from the vulnerability of the other. The privilege can bunker down for a little while, but in the end, their safety is the measure of the safety of the most vulnerable. We're all in this together. So pragmatically, the forum calls us to labor together, to partner together, to face the problems that afflict us all. Now that's the explicit argument in some of the conference materials. Implicitly, the forum organizers know that there is a radically religious rationale for our needing to address the question of partnership. We are all radically relational. Each of us relates to a mysterious creator that we call Allah, that other traditions have another word for, but we are all radically related to this sacred mystery. We're related to each other as persons. The very meaning of being a person is our radical relatedness to each other. We're related to our societies, and we're related to the earth that we inhabit together. And so if we're so radically related, your well-being is my well-being, and ultimately my well-being is your well-being. And so again, we're called on religious grounds to partnership. So both of these grounds, the pragmatic and the religious, are precious to us as a forum. Now I'm going to ask us to think together about what would be the final destination for our partnership. I'm going to pose it in very radical terms, and I realize that we're going to have to walk there step by step together. But I would like to suggest to all of us, and for us to think together about the need for a decentered movement. A movement that does not have a center in the sense that it's not owned by a particular government, not owned by a particular organization, a particular religion. It is in fact owned by all of us, that we need today to have such a decentered movement. It would not eliminate any of the good work that's being done, any of the existing movements, any of the existing organizations, or any of the people, billions of them around the world, that are struggling their very best to do what is good. But a decentered movement, if we could imagine it properly, could help us all to align and collaborate in a single movement. Billions of people, millions of organizations, and already existing movements are in a sense already part of this decentered movement, but they don't yet know it as a decentered movement. They don't yet know it as a sense of global solidarity. Now this is a very demanding, I think, possible answer to this challenge of partnership. I think it has a number of basic requirements, and then it has a number of technical requirements. And I'd like to review them simply for our consideration. Foundationally, we need, and I think the forum is uniquely positioned to help us think this through, we need a fully holistic, comprehensive vision of peace. And under that vision of peace, a clear ability to see the comprehensive threats to peace. We started with the threats to peace, but threats to peace are known against a more positive vision of peace. And we need to sketch that positive vision for peace. And Islam, and the other world religions, other centers need to contribute to this. We need a holistic, comprehensive vision of peace that all of us can finally say, yes, I see myself in that vision of peace. If we need that comprehensive vision of peace for a decentered movement, we need something else. And let me describe it as something the entire human family is in a sense aching for. We need a new story. We need a new story for our human family. We need a new story that necessarily is a sacred story. It's not that we don't have sacred stories and that they're permanently valid. Islam has a sacred story. Judaism has a sacred story. Christianity has a sacred story. All of the indigenous people have sacred stories. But today, we need a new shared story that can respect each of our religions and can respect the fact that they are different, but at the same time that we have much, much in common. Now, we already have an existing public story, and this is largely the story of modernity. It's the story that's used in the United Nations, most of our public institutions, in many of our public schools, and it has good points, but it's not a fully happy story. It's a story that is based, unfortunately, on the separation between the sacred mode of trying to understand, the sacred mode of questioning what is the nature of the real, and the scientific mode. Both of these are important modes of understanding, and we can't reduce one to the other. We need both of these. And we need a new story that can balance, harmonize the sacred mode of inquiry with the historic, with the scientific mode. The current story, the modern story, is not a fully happy story, as I mentioned. It reduces reality into inert and unconscious matter. It's not a relational story. It's a story too often of isolation, loneliness, and indifference. And those are some of its very bitter fruits. The new story must heal the divide between the scientific and spiritual ways of knowing, honor the religious diversity that we labor to align around, what we share in common, and help us, in the words of the Holy Quran, to truly know one another, in the rich spiritual sense of the word know that the Quran used. Now, what would this do for us if we had this story? It would begin to awaken the decentered movement's awareness as a movement. A movement needs a story, and if we need a new global decentered story, it needs a movement, it needs a story. And we would be central to try to build this story together. So it would awaken that decentered movement to being a movement. It would align the decentered movement's autonomous actors so that then collectively they would begin to add up to a comprehensive and coherent strategy. And such a movement with such a story would draw new members into it. There are technical requirements beyond these more fundamental ones. We need to have an open brand that all of us could affiliate with without surrendering our own identities or our own brands. We need to have special organizations committed to mapping who is doing what, where, in all of the subfields that deal with human flourishing, or all of the subfields that deal with addressing today's deep burdens, deep challenges. We need to have organizations that were committed to curating the collaborative work across the field. We need anchor institutions that would commit themselves to being able to foster this decentered movement with a new sacred story that honors our existing sacred stories as well as science. Here, I think it's a forum that could be so priceless to help this move forward. I can imagine in many of your own imaginations the question arising, is this realistic? Is this possible? Is something so ambitious even likely to happen? Its magnitude and its interlocking requirements are very large indeed, and so we should dismiss it as perhaps simply not feasible. Let me report to you, however, that already, even among members of this forum, there are those working on bringing the Islamic story into such a new shared sacred story. Let me report to you already that there are foundations, including my own, the Fetzer Institute, which are changing their missions from being the funders of this project or that project to becoming the backers of a decentered movement that would engage all of us. And they, in turn, are counting foundation after foundation and high-net persons of philanthropic interest that are committed to this possibility, bringing this possibility to birth. The sheer scale of our interlocking challenges, the sheer scale of our shared flourishing I would suggest that we need to start walking steadily towards that possibility of a decentered movement of movements. I have no doubt whatsoever that the forum could be an anchor institution and contributor of this possibility. I invite you all to ponder this as you say your prayers before God, asking, what does Allah ask us to do today together for our shared flourishing, and to shoulder address together, all of us as agents, the great threats that we all face. For your kind patience to entertain my simple remarks, I give you my heartfelt thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, for joining us in the panel, and thank you for your remarks. Dr. Whitley basically set the stage for us to discuss partnership. And as I said earlier, this is the second theme of this conference. We discussed the globalized world and the necessity of peace. Now we need the necessity of partnership. And for that, we have assembled two religious actors and policymakers in this session. So how we can have that partnership together at the Sharakat. So we're going to have a discussion here, but we may need to end the session a little bit earlier. So I ask my panel here to be short so that we can have an opportunity for one or two questions as well. So I wanted to begin this discussion by asking questions to the panel here. And please allow me to begin with Her Excellency Brenda Abdullah, who is the Assistant Secretary of Partnership. Look at the title, Assistant Secretary of Partnership and Engagement at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So Brenda is from the United States, and she has been forging and creating partnership on behalf of the U.S. government with civil society and many organizations. So Brenda, partnership is critical. We all know that Sustainable Development Goal number 17, calling for partnership between government, civil society organizations, and the agenda of no one left behind. We need everybody at the table so that we can basically address the issues of the world. What you have done to achieve that, Brenda?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. As Dr. El-Sanusi mentioned, I do have the distinct pleasure and privilege of serving as Assistant Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security in the Biden administration. I am one of a number of growing Muslims serving in the administration, and I'm honored to be a part of a very diverse administration and to represent the department here today. It is very fitting, of course, that the theme of this conference is partnerships, and really grateful to the organizers for inviting us here today and also focusing on such a key and critical effort. And I would say that for the Department of Homeland Security, we recognize that trusted partnerships are absolutely critical in everything that we do. My office, the department, I should say, represents 250,000 employees that are responsible for securing the air, land, sea, and borders to prevent illegal activity and facilitating travel and trade. Our subject matter experts and security professionals work day in and day out on a complex range of issues, everything from disaster preparedness to cybersecurity. But one of the most critical efforts that I am most proud of to share today is that we stood up for the first time and convened a faith-based security advisory council of over 24 individuals that represent diverse faith backgrounds, law enforcement, and the intelligence community to advise the Secretary of Homeland Security on issues that impact faith communities. I'm honored to be here today with one of our council members, Imam Majid, who is here today. This council looks to serve the communities across the country, and we recognize that faith leaders are critical partners in ensuring the safety, security, and resilience of communities nationwide. And by equipping our faith leaders with the resources they need, it leads to stronger communities and stronger democracy. And so, to keep my remarks short, I'll just share, one item that we really value that faith and community leaders bring to the table is looking how best we can equip them to protect their places of worship. We recognize that in the United States, we face a dynamic threat environment that continues to evolve. And it is our sacred right in the United States and globally to practice our faith freely. And so to ensure that safety and security of communities, we look towards our faith-based council to advise us to lead better policies and better resources to ensure the safety of all communities. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is exactly the 3 minutes remark that I was looking for. So you set the example quite well here. I want to come to you, Your Excellency, Mohammed Saeed Niyadi. His Excellency Niyadi is the General Director of the Administration of Islamic Affairs and Endowment at the Ministry of Religious Affairs and Endowment here in the United Arab Emirates. Your Excellency, you make strategies that are here. And also, United Arab Emirates, you practice this partnership when you do them here. And as a policy maker yourself, how we can advance partnership, engaging everyone, bringing everyone at the table. What are the key elements that you see today to basically have a successful partnership?
Dr. Sunusi is discussing our understanding of our information and leadership. I'll be speaking Arabic if I do. الشراكة جدا مهمة، لكن لأن تجمع جميع الأطراف لازم يكون هناك هدف مشترك ما بين الأطراف. لازم يكون كذلك غاية وقيمة مضافة لكل طرف موجود. قد يكون طرف واحد، قد يكون مجموعة أطراف. قبل اللقاء كنت أفكر أفضل شراكة واحد يفكر فيها الإنسان. احترت ما بين مايكروسوفت، احترت ما بين سبوتيفاي وجوجل. هذه كلها مجموعة شراكات لحد الآن موجودة. لكن أفضل نموذج أنا أفكر فيه هي الشراكة ما بين زوجين، الأم والأب. لأن هي شراكة ما بين شخصين مختلفين، طبيعتهم جدا مختلفة ولهم ما مشترك. غير المودة والمحبة اللي بينهم اللي كانوا مشتركين من الأطفال اللي هم نواة المجتمع. حتى تجمع هذه الأطراف لازم يكون هناك قيمة مضافة لكل طرف. الأمر الثاني عندنا قيم مبادئ مختلفة. إذا اتفقنا على القيم الثانية والفلسفة مهم جدا أن نتفق عليها. إذا هناك اختلاف ما بين قيمة وقيمة أخرى مستحيل الشركاء يتفقون على نتيجة مشتركة في ذلك. لكن فيها مستهدفة. اليوم أنا ممكن يكون عندي فيها مستهدفة غير عن الشركاء. مثال ذلك اليوم ماركس عندهم يعني شركتين مختلفتين لكن كسرت الشراكة لأن كل واحد من فيها مختلف. لكن عندنا لويس وتون وآي بي إم فيها مستخدم البشر يشتغلون في تقديم وسيلة ونتيجة وقيمة مضافة.
Great. Thank you so much. You did even better. I mean, 2 minutes, so it's really great. I think we're moving quite well here. But you started really from the family, the foundation of partnership. So we need to work there to make sure that the partnership there is strong so that we can continue to move to the wider society, which is really an amazing approach here. I want to turn it to you, Bob. So Pastor Bob Roberts, is known to all of you. He's a founder of the Multi-Faith Neighbors Network and Global Net, and he is also a key partner to the Forum for Promoting Peace, to Abu Dhabi Forum for peace, very key partner in a number of initiatives. So Bob, I understand you have been doing this. At the practical, to achieve that, you engage imams, you engage pastors, and you engage many civil society, aspects of it. So can you just shed some light about the necessity of partnership? We can't resolve problems without partnership.
Yeah, two things I would just say that are very important. If you're going to have the partnerships, they have to start before you have the situation you're responding to. So you've got to constantly build the relationship between government leaders, other clerics that are there. We had a situation in January where a mosque, a synagogue was held hostage by an extremist. The man was a Muslim extremist, and I knew of an imam from the part of the world this man was from, but this was in an area where they didn't have many Muslims. And so because I had a relationship with the police chief and the mayor and everyone, I was able to get this imam in order to negotiate with the man, and I wasn't the only one. There were other people that were helping. But we had those relationships in advance, so they went a long way. I would also say this: we're never going to know when we're going to have problems that we can benefit from what others have been through. In my country, the number one form of extremism and terrorism, I'm sorry to say, is white Christian nationalists. And white Christian nationalists many times don't go to a church, but if they do, I'm sorry to say they're going to be in an evangelical church, much like the one I go to. So that's where the greatest rise in extremism is, in terrorism. So what can I learn from Muslims? And I've been learning a whole lot. How can we work with them? What can I learn from our government? And how we work together and trying to think deeply about how do we spot this? How do we address it? And it takes a whole community to be able to do that. So there's tremendous benefit from what all we've been through right now, because we're living in a time where there's extremists on almost every single religion. I mean, I could list the countries and the religions, but I won't. We get in trouble with that. But we all have challenges in that category. We have much to learn from one another. Experiences we've been through, we can put that into practice.
Wonderful. So Bob, you really touch upon very important thing. I call it preventive measures. So you want to do preventive measures through partnership. And that really gave me a segue to move to Imam Mahdi next year. And you do this together with Commissioner Imam Mahdi. By the way, all of us, let's congratulate Imam Mahdi for his appointment by the Senate as a commissioner for the U.S. International Commission for International Relations. So congratulations. So Imam Mahdi is also the Imam of one of the largest mosques in the United States, which is called the Adam Center, is the executive Imam. Imam Mahdi, you have been working with WAW. WAW mentioned preventive measures, using partnership, partnering with imams and evangelical pastors to prevent problems. But I also understand, Imam Mahdi, there are some challenges in making this partnership. So I want you really to focus on the challenges of partnership.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sunusi. I would just like to say that disclaimer, I'm speaking in my personal capacity, but as a commissioner, I have to say that all the time. I would like to say that one of the biggest challenges of partnership is mistrust. How can you build trust in local communities between people of faith, with government, with the civil society? And I do believe that the trust issue can be resolved by building relationships. And in order to build relationships, you have to have humility. You have to get out of your comfort zone to get to know someone. And I do believe that one of the challenges of partnership is the people who always assume that partnership means that you let go of your principle. You have to know what you are partnering about or on, and how to sustain that partnership. One of the biggest challenges, I think, is the involving second generation and women. And We have to have in every partnership, secular society that sometimes we don't involve in partnership. I'm talking as clergy here, probably very kind to say that. And therefore, youth and women. Therefore, those are the challenges of partnership. How can we get young generation involved in building those partnerships so it can be sustainable through intergenerational, religious, but also gender equity and participation.
Thank you so much, Imam Majid, and really focus on engaging young people as we continue to forge partnership is really a very critical element for a successful partnership. I want to come to you, my good friend Sharon Rosen here. So Sharon is the Global Director of Religious Engagement for the Search for Common Ground, and also she is the Religious for Peace Secretary General Advisory Council as well. So Sharon, you have been doing partnership for long. I know that. And I know currently you're also working on a very big partnership in a number, I think 7 countries, trying to advance partnership by advancing religious freedom and other things. So the search is engaged on this for one time, Search for Common Ground. So if there's any specific examples for a successful partnership, because we have been discussing issues. We discuss climate, we discuss the economy, we also discuss the pandemic, COVID and all of that. But we need partnership.
Thank you, Mohammed. The drawback of coming last is that most people have said, everybody has said everything I wanted to say. But the benefit is that you highlight specific points are important for me. So, yes, Search for Common Ground has been working on partnerships for many, many years. We have 5 foundational values, of which the first one is collaboration. Collaboration to build trust and to include everyone. And if you're talking about one particular project that I wanted to speak about, and that is a project or an initiative, it's a multi-year, funded by the Dutch government, to promote, to advance and advocate for freedom of religion or belief, or no belief, across 7 countries. The countries are Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iraq, Kenya, Mali, Nigeria, and Uganda. And the purpose is to support the capacity of religious actors to engage in intra-religious dialogue, inter-religious dialogue, and to build respect and cooperation around religious freedom, and to work together multi-sectorally with policymakers, with governments, and across regions and internationally to advance religious freedom, particularly in relation to those countries. And the initiative has the specific focus of amplifying the voice of women and youth and enabling them to be heard so that they can be part of the decision making. Because as Imam said, it is absolutely essential to include women and youth. One example of our work in Nigeria, one of our success stories from Jizra in Nigeria, is that both young men and women have successfully advocated to their local authorities for better electricity access across the board for the entire community, regardless of ethnicity and religion. And this has combated interreligious tensions over access to resources. It's provided opportunities for better economic stability for these young people, and to actually reduce their vulnerability to radicalization.
or engagement and supporting their engagement in more activities in relation to religious freedom. So it's comprehensive. It's not just that we want to create partnerships themselves, but because it can really make a difference towards peace. There's just one other thing I wanted to say, and that is really to focus on this issue of women and youth. Women are 51% of the population, and interesting parallel, 51% of the world's population is under the age of 30. So they have to be part of that decision making. And I was in a session this morning, a wonderful session on women in a workshop, but the whole panel were women, and it was a workshop which was small in relation to this plenary. And I was really proud to be a woman as I was listening to the women speaking there of the work that they do. But that's something that needs to be heard in the plenary as a whole, and that we need to move past that tokenism, which we unfortunately see too much, particularly within traditional societies, to make women and youth very much a part of that holistic decision.
Thank you, Sharon. You also added this dimension of the involvement of women in a successful partnership, and I completely agree with you. I was so impressed, by the way, yesterday when Dr. Muhammad Abusuf here, sitting in the front here, when he took the stage, he spoke of the critical role women play around the history. So that was really very good, Dr. Abusuf. Thank you so much for that. Now, I want to come to you. I have prepared questions, but I'm not going to ask them. I want questions from you, 1 or 2 questions. We have 10 minutes to finish the session, so we're sharing with you. But I want to begin with you, Dr. Peter Mandeville. If you can please give the mic to Dr. Peter. Peter Mandeville is the senior advisor to the United States Institute of Peace, and he is working on partnership, many aspects, and he's also professor, at George Mason University. Peter, can you give us a couple of minutes about the necessity of partnership?
Thank you very much, Mohammed. I will try to speak for less than 2 minutes because I think it's so important that we invite all of these voices into the conversation. I want just to briefly share one observation from my own experience working on issues of religion and peace building within governmental spaces. And this is to talk about one of the obstacles that we often face to building these partnerships. And this is the fact that the world of religion and faith and the worlds of government bureaucracy often employ very different frameworks and vocabularies that make these kinds of partnerships difficult to achieve. Take, for example, the Marrakesh Declaration that you spoke about yesterday. And of course, the guiding hand in all of this was our host, Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayyah. I feel sometimes there is a risk that significant documents like the Marrakesh Declaration become, in the eyes of policymakers, something more a declaration or an ornament, beautiful words, and they fail to recognize and to leverage the deep wisdom and practical resources that can be found in this kind of document. So what do we need to solve this problem? I think we need to create a space of translation, not linguistic translation between Hebrew and Arabic, but conceptual translation, where people from the world of religion, the world of faith, who wish to partner and work constructively with their partners in government and in the worlds of practice and civil society, can sit down together with those in the worlds of government and civil society who also have an appreciation for the contributions and experience and wisdom that is in the world of faith, to bridge these two spaces and to turn documents like the Marrakesh Declaration into practical tools that will enable access to programs and projects that will increase inclusive citizenship, those who find themselves discriminated against as minorities. And I hope that the creation of this kind of space will allow us to turn these statements and declarations, of which we've had so many over the years, into the resources and tools that they so richly deserve.
Thank you so much, Peter. And I understand that the United States Institute of Peace and the Abu Dhabi Forum are partnering in creating such a space based on the meeting that His Excellency Sheikh Leah had with the President of the USLP. Now, any burning questions on partnership from the audience? Do you have any questions to ask the panel on the necessity of partnership? If there is no one, I will. I see Jack Zinko raising hand from the very behind. Jack, make it just a quick question. And I'm going to take 2 more questions as it's getting the mic. Anybody has a question? A question. Please get ready. The mic will come to you.
Yes, Mohammed.
Yes, Jack, please.
Just a very quick question, and I think all of you could probably answer. Imam Majid said one of the important things is building trust. And you've all done partnerships, you've all done that. So give us some examples of the best things that you've done that help to build trust. How have you found are good ways that you can build trust with these partners?
Thank you so much. Sister, the question, I love it. Please give it to the sister to ask a question. Yeah, anyone more sister would like to ask a question? Please.
My name is Khadija Diallo, and I'm the Director General of the High Authority for Awqaf in Niger. And our institution is basically a new institution with 2 years age, and I'm glad my brother is participating. My question about partnership. So the High Authority of Awqaf in Niger was created 2 years ago. Basically, we are using WACF as an instrument to mobilize resources to fill in the gap in the social sectors, education, youth empowerment, basically building the dignity for the most vulnerable. And one of the first initiatives that we launched was the first public Awqaf fund for the orphans and the martyrs of our military. And one of the components that we keep in this work is to work on changing the narrative on martyrdom. Because our military are being killed on the front by people who think that they are being martyrs. And before we launched the fund, one of the attacks was made during Maghrib prayers. So one of the thing that we should push forward is partnership to work on peace in the mind, changing the narrative on martyrs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a good, I'm glad to learn more about this. Oh, Bishop Angelis. I see my friend Bishop Angelis would like to ask a question. Please, Bishop Angelis.
Thank you, Mohammed. It's so wonderful to see so many wonderful friends on the stage. I totally agree with what Pastor Robert and Imam Majid said about the ongoing relationship and what our friend in the front said about being bilingual conceptually and also in terms of understanding. But we all know that many of these initiatives are instrumentalized by authorities. So you roll out the religious leaders when there is a problem to solve, and you put them back on the shelf when there is no issue. So how do we ingrain this into ongoing engagement? Because, again, as we've always said, we need to see religion as a formidable solution to 80% of the world's population. Because 80% of the world's population see themselves as affiliated to some sort of religion or belief. And how do we bring this message home as a matter of urgency rather than just as a matter of efficiency?
Wonderful, Bishop Ingeres. One more question for my sister. I think I see. I see Sister Corinne beside there. Give her the mic. So now this is going to be a last question. I come back to the panel, but so we're doing a good job so far. So let's see. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanusi. My question is specifically for Brenda. You've talked about the government with Homeland Security actually initiating committees that are bringing faith leaders from across the United States into helping the government deal with issues of hate and violence that are, we can see increasing in the United States. Can you tell us what the importance was that this committee was initiated in different departments in the U.S. that are initiating more of this type of partnership, and how other countries and their governments can actually learn from this?
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to come back to the panel to answer and also do a concluding remarks. I see, if there is a burning question there, okay, I will take it from the youth there. I will do it. Go for it, go to it. Yeah.
My question is for Bob and Majid.
Yes.
From what I learned from His Excellency Muhammad Niyadi, my mentor actually, I learned that when we work on a project, or any project, or all sort of tasks, when we reach a level of maturity, we need to transfer this experience. So we need to transfer it forward to our colleagues, the people ahead. I watched your project, what you are doing in a multi-faith network for a long time. And my question is for you and for all these initiatives, these international beautiful initiatives. When we will reach this maturity to transfer this experience around the world? Because I traveled to Latin America a lot, and the Muslim communities there, they see all these beautiful things happening around them, and they said, why these people don't reach out to us and share all of these experiences? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to start this concluding remarks with your mentor, His Excellency Niyadi. Their questions came for policy, and you're aware. So why don't you answer that before I move to the next? So because there are questions for policymakers, there are questions for trust and changing narrative. I'm going to give it to religious leaders, and Dr. Whitney get ready for it. And they are specific questions for Brenda, Your Excellency.
The transfer of knowledge and experience is all partnership will fail because it's very good people. But there are second layers of leaders or third layers of leaders. Once they take control, they always forget what's happening, the context about partnership. So to reach out is important, and to understand a common interest, a valuable position is there. One more comment we'd like to advise. Every relationship will end. Every partnership will end. So whenever relationship goes south, what's going to happen afterwards? Are we going to speak about each other? Or are we going to respect whatever relation we had before? That's an important factor, an imperative factor to make sure that we have the respect. They've gone to our valuable proposition, but also to transfer that knowledge.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. To you, Your Excellency Brenda.
Thank you. I'm going to try to answer 3 or 4 questions at once. As it relates to relationships with faith leaders, it is so important that we don't have what feels like a transactional relationship. What we absolutely don't want is that government only shows up in response to an incident. So we have encouraged constant communication, ensuring that we build those foundations of trust. So in instances like the hostage crisis in Colleyville, we knew exactly who to call. I knew that Pastor Bob Roberts would be in the room, and encourage our leadership across the department to reach out and build those relationships. So it's not housed with just one person, but that it is a departmental relationship. Also, to the point of transparency that was just mentioned, it's also very important that we are honest and that we listen to the feedback that we hear from our faith leaders, and that we build it into our policy making. And part of that constant communication is responding back to how we took the information that we received and how we utilized it to be be responsive in our policy making. Because no one wants to meet with the government over and over again and sharing the same concerns. You want to see a government that is transparent and responsive in terms of the concerns we're hearing out in the field. And to the other question about an example that other governments can look towards, we have housed at the White House is the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. That is housed at the White House, but every federal agency, including the Department of Homeland Security, has a faith center that conducts that regular and routine outreach. At the Department of Homeland Security, it's housed in our Emergency Management and Response Center, FEMA, which responds to hurricanes and disasters and COVID-19 response, which really, at its core, we know our faith leaders are our first responders. So I hope that answers those questions.
Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary Brenda. Moving to this side of the table, to religious actors. Your final remarks. The rest was mentioned.
So I would say also Bishop Angelos, and it goes to Jack's question as well, this is how you build trust. I think what Martin and I try to do more than anything else is facilitate relationships, because it's hard to kill somebody or be mean to someone that you become friends with. So you're talking about humanizing. So the way that's made long term is when somebody becomes friends, and that means that relationship is maintained. We've seen that in multiple cities now. We've seen it in multiple countries. So the relationship, and what really helps that is community engagement. When you come together around some project, Jonathan Sachs talked about side by side. We talked about using our hands. When we work together long term on a project, it has a profound impact, but it's got to be something we own. It's where we sweat together and we get close together. And we young man, we want to go all over the world. But at this point, what we have to do, Majid and I have to take up money from the congregants. And so we don't have a lot of money. Sometimes we'll get like Templeton, just met a minister from Uzbekistan. So they allowed us to go to Uzbekistan. We're in 2 countries now. Met someone last night who wants us in Iraq. And so they're going to do the bill. So I don't know where you're from, but if you go, oh well, we're there. We'll come. Okay, come on.
First of all, I think that change begins in neighborhoods, and you have to start local. Any kind of movement doesn't have grassroots, does not have neighborhood focus, it will not succeed, in my opinion. You know, they said that think globally and act locally. And therefore, those partnerships has to be in the local community with religious actors, government, business people, civil society. It has to be around human concerns. Today we heard something about health, environment, addressing the issue of mental health, youth suicidal, crisis now in the world. It has to be based on human concern and involving people in the local community. And that's how then you can scale it up into the national level and then the global level.
Thank you so much, Imam Mahdi, focusing on bottom up, which is very critical. Sharon.
There are 3 points that I'd like to make. First of all, in terms of the instrumentalization or working with specific religious actors, religious leaders, it's really important that policymakers have a comprehensive understanding from different leaders so that they're able to make judgments for themselves and that they're not using a specific religious leader for their own ends and then, as Archbishop Angela said, puts them back on the shelf the next time. The other point I would like to make is that building trust takes time. It's not something that can happen overnight. And I'm working and have been for the last many years with Muslim leaders, Israel and national religious Jewish leaders. And the building of trust is really an arduous effort, but at the same time it really reaps dividends if you can find a religious language that helps them to understand each other. And this links actually to what you were saying, Peter, about finding a language that people can understand. Education is really important, whether it's between religious leaders or between policymakers and religious leaders. You have to find a way that both can understand each other. And maybe just to get a final plug for an online course that USIP and Search developed together, which is in 3 languages, in English, French, and Arabic, which is specifically focusing on religion and peace building, common ground approach, and which, from what I hear, is one of the most popular online courses of USIP.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bentley, final word from you in 1 minute, last time.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, and to the remarkable panelists. I think the panelists illustrate graphically, powerfully what I was trying to suggest. Each of these panelists are talking about collaboration, and there are thousands more like them. I mean, not exactly like them, but committed like them. And we don't yet have a common story, and we don't yet have a way to find each other, and find each other as, in fact, colleagues in the same large movement dealing with different, equally critical segments of it. And so I think the forum is pushing us more partnership than each of you represent. In my formal work, I was exactly like you, committed day in and day out to partnership among the world's religious communities in some 90 countries. But we need something else as well. We're now at a level where more of what we are all doing is necessary, but not enough. And we need that not enough that we've got to fill in together. And that's a shared sacred story that can animate for us how we are all in solidarity with each other in, I called it a decentered movement, one that honors the identity of each of our respective organizations, movements. And we're only in the earliest stages, but that's the challenge I believe is still before us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bentley. I want to make one announcement. The award ceremony is moved up to 6:30 p.m. So in 50 minutes, everyone needs to be in that room next door for the award ceremony. But to conclude, I want to thank you all for attending this session, but above all, I would like you to express your thanks and gratitude to Vice President Dr. Bentley, General Director Sharon Rosen, Assistant Secretary Brenda Abdullah, Director General Muhammad Al-Miyadi, Pastor Bob Roberts, and Commissioner Imam Majid. So let's express our appreciation. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the award ceremony, and I will see you around.
Position,